You know, everyone thinks that just because you're undead, you have no need for coffee. Well, I'm here to tell you that just isn't the case. In fact, the closer you are to death, the stronger you need it. Oh, and speaking of coffee, I've brewed the perfect story to go with this cup of joe. I call this caffeinated tale The Brew.
Let's get this story straight. My name is Professor Williams. I am, or rather was, a researcher for a coffee conglomerate. For safety reasons, and to protect the company, we will call it 𝐻𝐵𝐼𝐺𝐶. Anyway, my job here at 𝐻𝐵𝐼𝐺𝐶 was to engineer the perfect coffee so that it would be the #1 coffee in every single household or coffee shop worldwide. For months, I sat in my lab thinking of ways to make our coffee beans stronger, taste better, and even more addicting. The end goal was to make people want more and more of our brand of coffee, making all other coffee companies go out of business. I tried everything I could think of, but every new recipe I concocted was a failure. Each time I worked on a new recipe, it couldn't deliver the results I desired. The others on my team were growing impatient, and our shareholders were eager to pull the plug. I, on the other hand, was nowhere near ready to give up. I had to convince them to give me and my team one last chance. Please, give me one last shot. I have everything riding on this. My whole career as a scientist is riding on this project's success.
Professor, this is a business, not a charity. You and your team have already reached many dead ends in your research.
Nothing you did to chemically alter our coffee has even remotely come close to what we were hoping to achieve.
Unless you have any other avenue that you're capable of proposing here, I think we're all in agreement that it's time to pull the plug on your funding.
Well, actually, there is one thing we haven't tried. Gentlemen of the board, what we need is an entirely new species of coffee bean. I have kept this quiet until now because I didn't want to rely on rumors and old wives' tales, but I've used my own resources to scout the location of the fabled coffee plant known as the Sleepless Giant. My team researched several different countries to find it. We looked into everywhere from the coffee bean's origin, Ethiopia, all the way to Peru until we finally found what we think we are looking for, located in the nation of 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿.
The Sleepless Giant? You've got to be joking, Professor.
Gentlemen, I assure you I am not joking in the slightest.
Very well, Professor. But remember, this is your last chance. If you do not bring back this, whatever you call it, fabled coffee plant, not only will you lose your funding for your research on this project, but your contract with the company will be terminated indefinitely. Is that understood, Professor Williams?
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. I will not fail you. You have my word. I did not lie to them, not in the slightest. I had indeed narrowed down the location of the fabled coffee plant, known only as the Sleepless Giant, to a remote village in 𝐻𝐻𝐻. My team and I left the following day. It was a long trip, but when we got there, we stopped to get supplies in the village. As we were loading up, we asked a few people where we could find the plant or if they knew anything about it, but they either didn't know or refused to say. Eventually, one of our guides struck up a conversation with a local when I butted in. Ask him if there's anyone in the village that would know anything about the coffee plant we've come all this way in search of.
He says you must speak to the village shaman.
And where can we find this shaman?
He will be at the edge of the village. Come, he is already waiting for us there.
We finished loading up the vehicles as quickly as possible and headed on our way to speak with the shaman. The village was small but easy to get lost in. I was already grateful to have our guides leading the way, not to mention that none of my team spoke 𝐒𝐿𝐴 Creole, a mixture of French, Portuguese, Spanish, English, Taino, and West African languages. We drove about the equivalent of 4 city blocks to reach the western edge of the village, where there stood a poorly built hut. I'm guessing that's the shaman inside?
You will find the one you seek inside.
I'll take that as a yes. Wait here, I told my team as I exited the vehicle and approached the hut. I pulled back the curtain that acted in place of a doorway and ducked inside. Immediately, I saw him. He sat cross-legged, smoking from a long wooden pipe. His eyes were fixed on me. I could tell he was a man of much importance to the villagers, but all that mattered to me was my mission. If he would have dared to deny me knowledge of the location of the sleepless giant, by God, I probably would have burnt the whole village to the ground in a fit of rage. I knew that he sensed this in me too, as there was a brief glint of fear in his gaze.
You've come very far, but you know not what demons you will conjure if you find what you seek.
I guess you already know why we're here then.
You seek the sleepless giant. Yes, I know what it is and where it is, but you do not know of the danger that you face.
I've come too far to turn back now.
Whosoever possesses that plant will be forever damned to hell for all eternity or experience a fate worse than death.
I didn't pay any attention to the shaman's warnings. I simply shrugged it off as superstition from frightened villagers.
But I can see that you are not a man easily swayed by my warnings. Very well. I will tell you where you can find what you seek.
After receiving the directions to the plant's location from the shaman, I exited the hut and rejoined my crew and our guides. As we drove away, I could see the shaman watching us as we left in our jeep. He was standing just outside of his hut. I could sense an aura of regret in his deathly stare. He knew that we were all in danger, but he also knew that we would let nothing stand in our way. We were here with one goal in mind: to brew the best damn cup of coffee man has ever tasted.
Why are we stopping?
We've run out of road. From now on, we go on foot.
We traveled for hours through the trees and brush, encroaching deeper and deeper into the forbidden jungle. It was then that we saw it. Look! That must be it.
It's beautiful.
It was even more beautiful than we could ever imagine. The plant was unlike anything we had ever seen before in our lives. The leaves were a bluish green and the coffee bean itself was brown with an orange stripe around it. It was twice as big as an average coffee bean, but we came prepared for the extra cargo. Gather all that you can find.
Every last one?
Every last one. We couldn't find many, but the samples were so large that it didn't matter. We still had more than enough to supply a small army. When we returned to the village, it was deserted. We saw not a soul left in that place. It was weird, but we didn't have time to investigate. Luckily, our cargo crew and the pilot were still waiting for us at the airbase. Radio HQ, tell them we have the cargo. We're coming home. After returning back to our lab at 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐿, we dove into our work to concoct the perfect coffee. As we were grinding the beans into a fine powder, it let off a pungent odor. It was an indescribably pleasant and intoxicating aroma, like nothing known yet to man. When it was done being grounded into a powder, it was time to test it. Looking back, maybe we shouldn't have taken those beans. Or we should have at the very least begun safety trials using animals. But we were too impatient to care about such things. We had a few volunteers as well as a few employees from 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐿 as test subjects. We put the coffee powder in one of our machines and brewed it. When it started to percolate, the smell from the beans got even stronger, and our noses were in heaven. Such a smell as what was produced from the coffee only piqued our insatiable curiosity. We had to know if we had succeeded in our quest to create the most delicious coffee in the world. I poured the black substance into each mug for our test subjects. They each took a sip of the freshly brewed coffee, and everything seemed fine. In fact, everything was better than fine. Our test subjects were ecstatic.
This coffee is delicious. It's the goodest thing I've ever tasted.
They were enjoying it down to the very last drop.
What do you call this most amazing coffee?
I looked down at the black liquid. No light escaped it. It didn't even have a reflection on its surface either. It was so incredibly black. Black brew. That's what it's called. Now, who would like another cup? I smiled as their hands all shot up without delay. Again, their cups were filled. This time, there was no hesitation as they all gulped down the contents.
More!
No longer were they waiting patiently to have us fill their cups for them, as they all scrambled to be the first to satisfy their craving for the black brew. It was everything we could have hoped for and more. Our coffee was both delicious and maddeningly addictive. The subjects were wildly energized, and that high didn't seem to be wearing off any time soon. We continued to observe them over the next 24-hour period. None of them got any sleep since drinking the coffee. At first, we thought it was just a slight side effect, until days started to go by and employees started stealing samples of the coffee. I confronted 2 of them. "Why did you steal the samples?"
I need it to be happy.
It made her happy, all right. It made her feel completely and utterly blissful. I then turned my attention to the other test subject. "And you? Does the coffee make you feel this way as well?"
It makes the pain go away.
"Where does it hurt?"
Inside my skull.
I shook it off as merely headaches that he was suffering from, a symptom caused from his lack of sleep. I recorded it as such in my notes and went about the rest of my work schedule. That's when things took a bizarre and horrifying turn. One of the trusted employees began to slowly go mad to the point where he was ripping out the hair of his head and flesh from his bones.
My insides need to taste the air.
It was a gruesome and horrifying sight. Many watched in shock and some felt sick to their stomachs as the man's blood hit the floor with a sickening splatter, followed by a loud thud as he fell backwards in his chair, slamming his head on the counter and collapsing in a heap. We thought that it was the worst that it could get, but it didn't stop there. 2 other employees, a male and a female, were in the middle of a sexual act in one of the office bathrooms. As the female employee was giving him oral, something compelled her to rip his genitalia off with her teeth. Instead of an agonizing yell from the man, a spine-chilling moan of pleasure erupted from him as he fell to the floor and bled all over the damn place.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Blood dripped from her mouth and chin as she started to chew and eat his genitals, cannibalizing him as he was still alive.
I must have you inside of me.
After witnessing the ghastly sight, I knew I had to contain the subjects until I could come up with a way to stop this from happening. The carnage just kept going on and on around me. The man from before, I will call him Worker 1, kept ripping his flesh off his bones until there was nothing left to peel off. workers 2 and 3, the ones in the restroom, well, she kept on devouring his flesh as he was still alive, moaning in ecstasy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
There was nothing but absolute madness all around me. If only I would have listened to the shaman back in Jeudy, none of this would have happened. Everyone would have been fine if it wasn't for me wanting to create the perfect cup of coffee. Thank God we tested this before it went into full production. If this would have gotten out into the public, not only would I lose my job and Happy Mug Co. go out of business, but I could wind up in prison for the manslaughter of millions of people. I had to find a way to protect my ass and hide this failure of an experiment from my superiors. I had to do whatever was necessary to cover this up and to stop this insanity. I took out my pistol I had locked in a safe, went into the containment capsule, and put a bullet in each of my co-workers' heads. I did it to put them out of their own misery, and in a way, out of mine. That wasn't all that I did. I cut up their bodies and tossed the pieces into the company incinerator, where we dispose of all of our garbage. That way, no one will ever find them and never link their deaths back to me. After that, I went back to my office to dispose of the last of the coffee, the black brew. To my horror, when I got there, I noticed that the coffee was gone. Someone had taken it. I knew I had to stay calm and think rationally. Maybe I had simply misplaced it, but maybe I got rid of it and didn't realize it. That had to be the case, as there was no one left alive that could have known about the black brew. I laughed a sigh of relief at the realization that this nightmare was finally over. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the lab. I turned on my television set and changed the channel to get the daily news.
Viewers should be advised that there has been no official explanation as of yet for what is being called an outbreak of violence. Teams from the Center of Disease Control and the Offices of Emergency Preparedness have been dispatched to several undisclosed locations throughout the city. While martial law has not yet been declared, the governor and mayor have both issued a stark warning that citizens are to remain calm and stay indoors. We want to warn you that the reports hereon are graphic and that younger members in your household should be removed from listening distance.
The stone-faced anchor was giving a report of people going stark raving mad, killing one another in catastrophic ways. A woman gouged the eyes out of her husband's skull. Infants were taken from their cribs and brutally beaten to death. Pets were eaten alive by their owners.
We have been advised not to speculate as to the cause of these events, but there have been reports of coffee being consumed in nearly all cases. At this time, we cannot confirm whether or not there is any connection between the coffee and the sudden outbreaks of violence.
The horrifying mayhem would have continued if the authorities hadn't started putting people down like wild animals. After the carnage died down, An investigation was started and it led back to a local coffee shop. The lost container of the sample was found and it led them straight to 𝐓𝐼𝐼𝐼𝐻. I quickly gathered and burned all the information I had on the coffee. I took extreme measures, but the guilt inside me is too strong to let the truth go unknown. And so I sit here writing this, so that everyone will know of the events that took place here. The righteous thing for me to do is to kill myself. The last thing I will say to you is this: do not drink the black brew. Whatever you do, do not drink the black brew.
I could definitely use another cup of the strong stuff. I'm just not feeling reanimated yet. So how did you like my story? Did it wake you up with fright? Or was it not brewed to your particular taste? Let me know in the comments section below. Tastes like mud to me. You could definitely use more worm.